40 years old and still the spare. Prince Harry, of course, left the United Kingdom in search of greener pastures in California with his wife, Meghan Markle. And probably for the first time, he really wanted to drop the spare moniker. However, he is now still the spare, this time to his wife. As things continue to look pretty dour for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, especially with the new report of additional bullying allegations, this time in the United States, the couple is really on the precipice of a really rough fall. And as Netflix gears up to debut maybe a couple of their shows, Harry's polo documentary and Meghan Markle's cooking show, whenever that gets off the ground, things are not looking too bright for him. And you got to wonder, is Prince Harry, maybe, just maybe, regretting his decision as he kicks off this big birthday? I would argue the answer is yes. That there are a couple things where you could just got to think that Prince Harry's looking at his life sometimes and thinks to himself, is this really want to be a spare yet again? This time to my wife, because I don't think he's any happier being a spare to Meghan Markle than he was his brother. And as he goes off on this guys only weekend, and when he shared with the media twice that his greatest gift, his greatest passion is being a father, and no mention of his wife on this big birthday, it's hard to not wonder, are things all rosy behind the scenes? Or is the fairy tale fantasy that Harry and Meghan spun for the world starting to fully fall apart? So we will explore this today. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany. I provide compelling royal commentary. So if you guys want to hit that subscribe button, I would absolutely love to have you back. We have such great fun on this. We have the Crown Report Saturday morning live stream. So and even a membership tier. There are links down below, so feel free to go ahead and check those out. So with Harry turning 40, there have been a lot of puff pieces in the media. These are just flowery, nonsensical articles, basically just saying how happy he is, where his life is, all these sorts of things. But there's been some interesting nuggets to pull out, particularly with two. One that he gave to People Magazine, one that he gave to the BBC. Now, as it turns out, People Magazine has kind of become now the de facto mouthpiece for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They've given a lot of exclusives to people. Ones I think that they've basically written themselves and People Magazine just puts on their website. And so we get this one from Harry. And what I will start off with is that there is actually an interesting change to this article, because initially the way it was worded, it basically seemed like Prince Harry had given them an email directly to share about him turning 40. And when I looked at that, how the wording is, you could actually see it both ways. It could be just that Harry sent a message and the spokesperson could have been inferenced, but People Magazine had to go back in there and put in the more specific. So in the original article, it said here that in an exclusive email to People, Harry says, the best gift I've ever been given is, without a doubt, my kids. I enjoy watching them grow every single day, and I love being their dad. This was updated later in a new article just saying that Harry tells People via a spokesperson. So why is this important? Because obviously language is very critical. Sometimes I do have typos in my thumbnails, but I really try to do things very well. And how you use language is, of course, incredibly important. And so you could read this again, like I said, both ways. An exclusive email to People, Harry says, could be via spokesperson, could be via him directly. But what I'm kind of trying to get overall with this video is that I think there is a big separation growing between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, especially in how they're dealing with the media. We already had the New York Times piece where it was initially reported that Meghan was living at her home in Santa Monica when she was supposed to be in Montecito, allegedly. That eventually got changed, and now we have this. And so it could obviously be, again, a completely innocuous thing, but it could also be read as Harry is trying to push his own, you could say, propaganda narrative, and Meghan Markle is trying to go back and clean up, going, oh no, this came from a spokesperson, this didn't come from Harry directly. Because again, this raises a lot of questions, because people are like, does People Magazine have Harry's direct email? And if they do, then that means they're getting stories directly from Harry and Meghan, which doesn't look particularly good for them. So it doesn't play particularly well. But what I find most interesting is that obviously he talks about his kids, which makes sense. He's proud to be a father. He enjoys his children, not taking that away from him in the slightest. But it does make me wonder, why not mention Meghan? Because Meghan, of course, is a critical aspect of his children, because she's obviously their mother, and the gift of them came through her. So I find it strange that he didn't include her in this particular quote. And we see something very similar from the BBC. And this is where I argue that perhaps he decided to go, People Magazine was his American thing, and he decided to go with the BBC for his British comments, you could say. But he says essentially the same thing. He just says, I was anxious about being 30. I'm excited about 40. Whatever the age, my mission is to continue showing up and doing good in the world. And of course, this is in direct opposition to the story that he basically enables his wife's abhorrent behavior to staff. That's basically it. And I just hate this just general thing. I'm showing up and I'm doing good. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. What does that mean? I'm good this day. I go and do this, so I'm good. Like, that's just dumb, in my opinion. I feel like something like that is very dumb. It's very much Meghan Markle's playbook, just saying something nonsensical, innocuous, vague, word salad. This is just word salad. Whatever the age, my mission is to continue showing up and doing good in the world. But you can't really do good in the world, Harry. You have a platform, sure, but you have no actual power, no actual way of really exerting a and changing things in many instances. I mean, you could start with could be the Baca people and what's going on there with the alleged abuse, and of course, his own staff. Like, he doesn't do anything to protect his own staff and do good for them. So why in the world could he do good for the rest of the world? And then he goes again and talks about his kids. Becoming a father of two incredibly kind and funny kids has given me a fresh perspective on life, as well as sharpening my focus in all my work. Being a dad is one of life's greatest joys and has only made me more driven and more committed to making this world a better place. So, again, you get this sense here that he's very much talking about being a dad, his philanthropic efforts, but no real mention of his wife, which again is super odd because Harry and Meghan have always portrayed themselves as salt and pepper. They sit in an office together with matching thrones, which I just can't stand that. I think to myself, I would go out of my mind if my husband was right here next to me as I work. And I'm like, can you not go somewhere else? I need to focus. Like, why? Like, them sitting right next to each other on this big table, it makes me think like a cult leader or something. Like, they have to be together all the time. They have a tree and it's entwined and it's like them. So a lot of that is sort of starting to fall apart. And again, you can't help but think, is he sort of bypassing how she likes to do PR to do his own? I think that could definitely be the case. Now, the other interesting thing here is that for his 40th birthday, he's planning on spending it away from his wife. So he's going to celebrate his birthday on Sunday with his family in California before heading off on a break with a group of his closest friends. And that's just I strikes me as a little odd. Why? I mean, I get it, but at the same time too, what Harry and Meghan have portrayed themselves as are two people who are so tied at the hip that one can't go somewhere without the other. Now, of course, they have taken individual trips, but generally, Meghan really always wants to go with Harry. I think in part because she wants to oversee and make sure everything's going okay. And there are two possibilities that come to mind. One again is that they're sort of on these diverging paths, and the other could be Meghan's friend group is finally appropriate for Meghan. She approves of all of them, and that's why he gets to go, and no other reason. Because again, we've been told basically that she's kind of a horrible, terrible, controlling person and belittles people and makes grown men cry. So I can't imagine if she does make her staff cry, she probably makes her husband cry too from time to time. And so this birthday trip on his own. Yes, he's spending some time with his family. Sounds like it's going to be a small affair, but then he's moving on to something else without her. So next we move on, of course, to the Sun article. And we've gotten a series of articles in the lead up to Harry's 40th birthday about how he's probably kind of somewhat miserable, basically is what most of them say. The Sun is the latest iteration. And so how Prince Harry has gone from spare heir to Meghan's plus one as pals fear birthday boy is hating his US life. Now, I will say Harry probably doesn't totally hate his life in the United States. California is a great place to live. It seems like they have a pretty decent community, although I would imagine, and my thought would be most of the community is pretty, how do I want to put it? Is pretty superficial. There's no depth to any of that community. Most of them are two-faced. So tell Harry and Meghan how great they are to their face and then gossip about them behind their backs. That's kind of the community Prince Harry is in. And becoming Meghan's plus one, it's probably not how he envisioned his life because he really wants to be. He's like, I want to show up and make change. But of course, when you're tied to Meghan Markle and she's kind of the antithesis of that, you can't really make that happen. So let's look at bits of this here because it's kind of a long piece. And of course, the Sun points out, like I mentioned as well, but the one thing plainly missing from Harry's statement was his wife, Meghan. And not to put anything out there, but we've seen just in August, since they've started kind of this PR push since August, a very disconnected couple, especially that CBS interview. I keep going back to that because it's still just shocking how disconnected they were. The only time he actually really looked at her, didn't look beyond her, below her, whatever, was when Jane Pauley pushed her on the alleged attempt to take her life. That's only the time Harry looked at her as if he would go, "Oh wow, she's not going to like that. How's Megan going to respond? Is she going to like?" It was like a curiosity factor more than, "Oh no, my poor wife and this experience that she had." He didn't really seem to care about that. So that again, rather interesting. So this I thought was super weird. Indeed, insiders claim Harry has become increasingly isolated and currently counts his best friend as his security guard, David Langdown, aka Langers. One source told us the guard is an English guy who moved to Montecito with his family. He and Harry are very close, very tight, as thick as thieves. They added that Harry has also been relegated to Meghan's +1 for events. Now, I see that as a little weird. If you are going to your staff to have friendships, you got problems. Not that you shouldn't be friendly with your staff, not even that maybe you should be friends with them. But I think sometimes too, there's a good little work life separation there. But that Harry counts as his best friend, like a security guard, if that's true, that does show a guy that is actually pretty isolated because he can't really have a normal friendship. He has to be friends with a guy who's convenient. He's convenient and he's the only one who can get into their little compound there. And so that's just a little bit weird. And so they go on to talk about, and this is a source. The source said the event summed up Harry's life in a nutshell. He was there more of a +1 than an equal, someone useful for a social media picture. His circle of friends has been curated by Meghan. His social life seems to be more and more guided and built by her. Yes. And of course, this is what Meghan Markle always wanted. She didn't like his friends because they didn't like her. She has to cultivate around him a group that just thinks and sings her praises all the time. And again, we've seen how Meghan treats her staff behind closed doors. If she treats them like that, belittling them, talking down to them, barking orders and everything, she 100% does that to Harry too. And so he has to go with what she wants in part to avoid the wrath. And so his social circle, his life is entirely hers now. Again, couples have different friends when they come into a relationship. And yes, they develop friends together. But this whole idea that Harry has left basically all his friends behind and now his social circle is completely relegated and controlled by his wife. That's not a healthy relationship. I don't care who they are. That's not a healthy relationship to anyone. If you've cut out basically all your old friends and all your old life and you're just have this entirely new dynamic, it's just not a healthy thing. And so apparently some of his English friends are coming into town, but he has lost a lot of them too. And especially for the Etonian set he used to have, which are some of his oldest best friends, like Skippy and Skip, Tom and Skip. Harry was one of the ushers at his wedding, and Harry didn't even invite the guy to his reception. Harry was probably going to be the godfather to Skippy's child. I know he has one, maybe he has two now. And so Harry just completely abandoned that relationship. And Skippy and Skip was one of his best friends for many, many years, and he lost it all with Meghan Markle. There's this weird little tidbit about the flowers Elton John sends and trying to make this case that Harry's going to have a lot of these really famous guys at his party. And it's like, no. So this is interesting because this is one of the things I've talked about quite a bit is that when it comes to them in the community, Meghan has a permanent smile, whereas Harry has a permanent scowl. And that is 100% true. I've said this time and time again. Meghan needs to stop grinning like a maniac. She looks manic. And Harry needs to dial up the interest level and smile a bit more because they look so weird. She's just there smiling so much. And then he's there. So I'm like, is this because her resting face is not a smiling one? She does that for the cameras. She does that constantly for the cameras. So it's actually hard to find a picture. Not that I'm trying to find necessarily a bad picture, but it's hard to find pictures of her showing different emotions and reactions because she has the perma grin on her face. She can't get rid of it. The manic's smiling. It's like, and her teeth are so white now you can see them from space or whatever. Like they glow in the dark, like Ross on Friends. It's like you just want to tell her, tone it down a bit. You need to tone it down because Meghan, again, needs to figure out kind of this middle ground that she can't seem to figure out, and Harry needs to also find one. Because the reality is, if Meghan Markle's doing that, most likely it's fake. That's the thing. That's the thing that kind of bothers me is that that perma grin is fake. And so the more she does it, the faker she looks. She actually needs to have her natural resting face. She needs to stop grinning quite so constantly because it does come across as absolutely fake. And Harry seems a bit more real, but he also seems, like they said, a bit forlorn. It seems like Harry has gone from flirty 30 to forlorn 40. He spends his days doing school runs, tootling around on his bike, followed by bodyguards, and walking his rescue dogs. I guess work doesn't come into that scenario at all. You guys also should be working, you know, keeping $100 million deal with Netflix. That would be smart, right? But no, they're terrible business people, as the Hollywood Reporter also shared that they can't make decisions. They usually make the wrong ones. And especially with Meghan, she can't take advice. So yeah, no wonder he's tootling around. They're just totally inept. And work days spent at a shared desk, which I don't think is necessarily super healthy. You can share a office room, but sharing a desk is bizarre. Are punctuated by meditation sessions. Sounds healthy, right? The Times, of course, talked about earlier this month or maybe even last month now. He's a very angry boy. He'd rather be top of the pops here with everyone loving him as they do with William and Kate. Yes. Nights out with his wife have not cheered Harry up. Nor would they. It's empty. What they do is empty. Everything they do is emptiness. And so, yeah, it doesn't fulfill him either to go out on a dinner date when things are still hell at home. It's like even a little night out doesn't make up for the fact that he doesn't speak to his father or any of his family members anymore. That doesn't fix that. Also goes on to say he and Meghan are said to have been verging on rude when they attended an event for Kevin Costner's 1805 charity on his estate last year. So apparently they didn't really socialize with anyone, didn't really interact with anyone. And there's kind of two ways to read it. Of course, they could seem distant and removed, but also understand too that they have a different place in some of the other celebrities in terms of the press interest in them in some different ways. But I also think too, Meghan Markle, according to even someone who is connected with Suits, she was hard to get to know, like really get to know, because she very much had a facade on at all times. She's not real. She's very fake. And so it's hard to get to know somebody who's totally fake. So it talks about how when he turned 30, he had a party set up by his best guy pal, Guy Pelly, and Ellie Goulding performed at the party. And there was so much fun, but none of that is happening anymore. I'm not sure who will attend Harry's 40th birthday party because he seems to be very isolated and dependent on Meghan. Yes, because he's in a foreign country and she doesn't have a ton of friends either in some ways. Yes, you could see the bookstore event and go, oh man, Meghan's friends with Oprah and all these ladies and stuff. No, most of that is fake. That's so fake. That's very Hollywood and very fake. They are friendly with people that they hope can get them to a certain spot so that they can maneuver them in the industry or whatever. They're not really friends with any of those people, though Harry may not totally know that. And of course, many of their shared friends took the side of his brother, as they would. Harry has behaved deplorably, and he still doesn't quite understand that. He still is confused. So Kinsey Schofield says celebrities know that they have to pick one side or the other and are saying we want to stick with the royal family. And I wouldn't really say celebrities because there's a definite difference between British and American celebrities, but 100%, they all know that true power resides with the crown. And at this point, what Harry and Meghan have failed to do time and time and time again is establish themselves as business people. So nobody in the industry really takes them seriously at this point, especially with this latest article coming out about what terrible managers they are, because they can't really do strong business with them. They are not movers and shakers in the industry. They're kind of a joke. You've obviously seen a very inept office, and so you can't really rely on them. So all of that to say, it's just like, why would you go and decide to hitch your wagon to Harry and Meghan? That's a failing proposition, as the Sussex Squad is now learning. I think they're having a little mini meltdown. They're like, oh, this is still the palace. I was like, no, guys, it's not the palace. It's the Hollywood Reporter. Again, we see these diverging narratives between the two. And Meghan seems to be looking ahead and Harry looking behind. We've seen this in a couple of different articles that they are very much sort of doing their own thing, which is to a certain extent is healthy. But at the same time, too, they're in a really critical spot right now. They're in a really this is make it or break it with Netflix. You guys actually need at this point. This is not the time to diverge. This is the time to collaborate and do better together. Yes, of course, they might actually do better individually, but when it comes to the business right now, if you're trying to salvage everything, like you guys got to work together and be as tight as you can be because that might be what saves the business. And so I don't know if they wanted to go down separate paths initially. That's what they should have done. Like tagging everything together, I think was maybe a bit of a mistake. And of course, the latest bullying allegations makes this not look any better, of course. And the big thing is too here is that Harry comes out looking much better than Meghan does. Yes, he's an enabler, but basically they've all said, well, he's pretty nice, but she's terrible. So really, they're all putting their focus on him as the better one and her as the not so good one. So all this together, what does this mean? We have, of course, instances where it seems like Meghan was living in a different house. We have posts where he's not mentioning his wife, just basically talking about how much he loves his kids. He has this lonely life, and this life he didn't really sign up for when he married Meghan Markle. His life is just totally and completely different. And they have obviously seemingly are looking in different directions. So, what can we all gain from all of this? So, I've posited before, and I think it's still true, is that they've really hit the rocks, I think. I think they've really hit the rocks. And what we could perhaps inference or maybe subjectively say is that as he is turning 40, Harry may be looking to a future without his wife. But if that is happening, I don't think they'll make it public for a little bit because as we found out, Meryl Streep was separated from her husband for like 6 years and never announced it. Same thing happened with Will and Jada Pinkett Smith. They were like, "Yeah, we've been separated for a long time and we're just now telling you." And so it's like, "Wait, what?" And there is an element there. And I think again, Harry and Meghan could very much fall into this trap. Whereas if they do, let's say let the public know they've separated within a year or so and they did this loved up display in Colombia. Well, that's totally fake. And again, they look like liars. And she already has this reputation now as being a bit of a liar. And the Hollywood industry itself is finding out that oopsie doopsie, Meghan Markle sold them this narrative that it was just the British press was so mean to me and everything like that. And it turns out maybe, just maybe, she was the problem and not Harry, not the royals. Well, that changes the whole game. That changes the whole perception of Meghan Markle. And I'm sure the rest of the industry is finding that out as well. But I think the biggest instigator in all of this, if they are maybe, again, looking at a separation now or at some point in the future, I think probably Harry's biggest disappointment is that despite leaving the royal family, he's still the spare. His wife turned him back into the spare. He was hoping she would turn him into the heir, turn him into this. You could call him like a mega man or something that he could be walking strong, having his own life, and then plowing ahead with her lovingly and cheering him on from the sidelines. But as it turns out, Meghan Markle played him. She was never interested in him really being the leader or them really striking out on their own because the royal family and the British press were so mean to her. She just thought he was convenient. He was a convenience to get her where she always wanted to be, as famous as humanly possible, hopefully being a mover and shaker in Hollywood and living the lifestyle of the rich and famous. And as Harry is hopefully maybe sort of finding out, is that she did that at the expense of his relationship with his family and friends. So we shall see what the future holds. But I think the decade of his 40s is in some ways going to be a little disappointing for Harry because the relationship with Meghan Markle, I don't think is going the way he thought it would. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of my thoughts and I shall see you again soon. Bye.